Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, and today we're taking a look at a brand new strategy game called Stormgate. Now if you're an RTS fan, you may have already heard of this game. It's being developed by a new studio called Frost Giant. They have a good number of developers who have previously worked on some of the best RTS titles ever, like StarCraft 2, Warcraft 3, and Command & Conquer. So if anyone can deliver a new RTS that can live up to the expectations of RTS fans, it's them. Now some of you who have been here on my channel from the very beginning might know that I started off covering StarCraft 2, and I've been lucky enough to be invited to the current closed alpha testing phase of Stormgate. Now unfortunately it is all under NDA, so I can't share any of my own gameplay or even talk about my thoughts, but Frost Giant have kindly allowed me to put up this summary of the previous alpha testing phase here a little bit early and also detail what is going on in the current phase. So the first testing phase was all about the 1v1 PvP competitive mode. Now the game is also going to feature a 3v3 PvP mode as well, a campaign that can be played either solo or co-op with a friend, and then a 3-player co-op mode versus AI. And as far as I know, these modes will be added to the testing phases as we go along here. I think it's really cool that they are adding so many different modes, because whilst 1v1 may be the most competitive mode, it isn't necessarily the most social of experiences, right? You can't play with a friend, so having these other modes will really be a game changer, and it should help bring new players in. So whilst 2 factions have been revealed, and I believe at least a 3rd is planned for the game, the first alpha test only featured the Vanguard faction, who are essentially the good guys in this war set in the distant future. And the primary focus here was on testing the matchmaking, stress testing, reliability, bug squashing, and fixing any crashes. And I have to say, for an alpha test, the game has been running extremely well. I haven't had a single crash yet, and it feels very smooth and responsive, which is absolutely paramount for an RTS title. Now whilst the main focus wasn't game balance, in true RTS fashion, that of course didn't stop people creating interesting, often cheesy strategies like turret rushes, not unlike a cannon or bunker rush from StarCraft. The Vanguard faction have a unique worker ability where they can work together to build the same structure faster. So they would quickly build a Therium refinery, which is the prerequisite for the turret, and then rush the enemy base. So if you were defending and you didn't have a refinery of your own yet, well, you basically had very little defense against it if it went unscouted, but thankfully Frost Giant have made some balance changes in that regard. A lot of other tactics utilized creeping around the map to gain a head start on resources. So if you've played Warcraft 3, you're probably familiar with creeping. There are these small groups of AI controlled enemies dotted around the map that you can encounter, but it works quite differently in Stormgate. In Warcraft 3, you would creep to gain experience, level up your hero, and unlock abilities. In Stormgate, there are no heroes, and instead, creep camps will give you certain rewards depending on the camp. So a resource camp will give you resources, a speed camp will give your units a temporary boost to their movement, allowing you to run down enemy units, for example. A health camp will heal your army while standing in the effect, and a vision camp will give you vision of that area of the map. Camps will respawn every couple of minutes, going up in level and difficulty. So I really like this addition to the game. It incentivizes players to get out of their base right from the start and take some map control. Maybe you want to run around the map and scoop up all the resource creeps to deny your opponent and get yourself a fast expansion. But on the flip side, if they're going for some sort of rush, well then your base may be left defenseless. And of course remember, this is all on a map by map basis, and where the creep spawns are, what kind of creep spawns there are, etc. There are just so many decisions to make here at the beginning of the game, as opposed to each player simply doing their build order and macroing up, which, especially from a spectator's point of view, isn't the most interesting thing. We've also seen multiple tournaments being put together by the community, which is really awesome to see the competitive side of the game get going here, even in these early alpha stages. I myself haven't had the courage to sign up for one yet, but I am busy practicing and improving, so who knows, maybe one day. Now Frost Giant have a great stance on tournaments as well. What you would normally expect from an RTS, is that the top level pros compete in the tournaments and everyone else are just spectators. But they want to encourage players of all skill levels to participate in tournaments, and I believe there will be some sort of functionality in the game to accommodate that on release. No further details on exactly how that's going to work, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. So that brings us to the current alpha testing phase. Not long ago, they revealed the second faction for the game, the Infernals, and they are now playable in the current alpha build, which is really changing things up a lot. If the Vanguard seem inspired by, let's say, Terran from StarCraft, I would say that the Infernals have a lot of different elements to them. I see some Zerg-like elements, for example, the Shroud kind of reminds me of Creep. You know, they have that around some of their buildings, and it's sort of like Creep, and it bolsters your forces, but they are far from being slimy aliens. They are, in fact, demons. But unlike the Vanguard, the Infernals are prepared to sacrifice themselves to destroy their enemies. So these large lummoxing units here are called Brutes. They seem to walk pretty slow and they have a slow attack speed, but they can actually split themselves in half to form two fiends instead. So that right there is a very interesting mechanic indeed. We've also seen that their worker unit, the Imp, seems to be able to blow itself up. So again, very different to the Vanguard. And this right here is one of the flying units called the Spriggan, and it seems to attack from the air with some sort of dark magic, so probably a great harassment unit there. What I really like here is everything from the art to the mechanics and the overall feel of the Infernals feels very different to the Vanguard. Obviously, we haven't seen what the third race is going to be yet, but I am so excited to find out how different that one is going to be to the two we've already seen. Now, if you're wondering how you can get into the alpha or upcoming beta, head over to playstormgate.com. There you can sign up for a chance to participate. I know they're adding more and more testers with every alpha phase at the moment, but if you don't get in, fear not, this game is actually going to be free to play, which again I think is a really strong move to get more players involved here right off the bat. After StarCraft 2 finally went free to play, it saw a lot more players. Now as for monetization, don't worry, it isn't going to be pay to win. There will be no NFTs or any of that nonsense. Instead, they will continue to evolve the story of the game with additional chapters for the campaign that will be released regularly alongside new units, maps, game modes and more. There's also going to be an in-game map editor, which as we know can be an incredibly powerful tool for the community, right? Just look at Warcraft 3 and the Defense of the Ancients mod, better known these days as Dota, which spawned, of course, the entire MOBA genre. But better still, this map editor will be accessible, I believe, in-game. So the older games like StarCraft 1 and 2, you had to run like a separate exe to bring up the editor, and honestly there were probably a lot of players who never even knew about it, so keeping it in-game is, I think, a very solid move. So very excited to see what's next for Stormgate. I definitely plan to cover this game more in the future, so if that's something that interests you, hit that subscribe button guys, have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video.